Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area. Back in April of 2020, when we decided to create this ongoing series on COVID-19's impact, first on nonprofits and then on small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area, we, like you, had no idea how long the pandemic would go on and what the health and economic impact would be in our community. Going into 2021, the pandemic is now killing more people, shutting down more nonprofits and small businesses, along with wiping out the livelihoods of families, neighborhoods, and communities. We will continue to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community, along with the founders and staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability until we can all get to the other side of the pandemic. Along the way, we will also share with you all the amazing solutions that our nonprofits, small businesses, foundations, and government leaders are working on to help us all get to the other side of the pandemic and come together to rebuild our communities with more economic, social, and environmental equality.
I think also the restaurant industry is such a tremendous industry worldwide, right? Like restaurants so often provide such a vital resource to communities, not just in food. You know, a lot of times it's around just the structuring of communities and making people feel seen and heard and welcome. And I know for all of my locations, we have regulars that are there every day and you get to know them and their stories. And without those spaces, you realize how isolated and lonely it can be for people.
This is the founder and owner of All Good Pizza, TATO, and Café Alma, Kristen Hulk. Kristin is part of the Bayview Women's Food Entrepreneurs who are change makers and community leaders, providing jobs, healthy food options, and a hand up to their fellow community members. I'm joined remotely via Zoom by Kristen Hulk, the owner of All Good Pizza, TATO, and Café Alma. Thanks for being here, Kristen.
Thanks for having me.
I've been a longtime fan of yours and All Good Pizza out in the Bayview, and I would love it if you could provide a little brief history of why you set up All Good Pizza, and then now why have you started 2 more restaurants in the Bayview community?
Yeah. Well, I've been a longtime resident of the Bayview. I've been here a little over 20 years. And when I first moved to the neighborhood, I was really struck by how few restaurants and food options were available in the community, particularly because we export so much food from the community. We've got the produce market, which has been here since the 60s that, feeds the Bay Area and beyond, really. Bayview actually used to be called Butcher Town. A lot of the meatpacking came from this community, and we still to this day have businesses like Molinari Salami. They've been here, for over 80 years. Evergood Sausage also has been here for a very long time. So All Good Pizza really started for me as a passion project to bring another healthy option to Bayview. And I really wanted to utilize the local resources of the community. So it was really my goal early on to use only local businesses to source from. And I did that by using Veritable Vegetable, which is a woman-owned cooperative that was started in San Francisco, kind of a pioneer actually in organics. And like I mentioned, Evergood Sausage, Molinari Salami, Crepe and Brioche, which is a local bakery that's been in the community for a few decades as well. I've been in the food business for many, many years prior to opening All Good Pizza. And when I opened All Good, I was actually the president and CEO of an organization called Namaste Direct, and we focused on predominantly women involved in food businesses in Guatemala and southern Mexico and Chiapas. And we did a business development program that focused on financial literacy training and business mentorship and also the sources of business capital. And I thought to myself, I love doing this work, but I'm traveling to Guatemala and to Mexico all the time. And where I really want to be is in the Bayview. So I opened All Good Pizza, like I mentioned, kind of as a quasi passion project. And fortunately, it was well received. And I was able to focus full time on All Good Pizza after about a year. So I quit working my other job and the rest is history. I've been in operation at All Good since the beginning of 2012. So we're quickly coming up on 10 years.
And then you decided to launch 2 new restaurants, TATO and Café Alma, also in the Bayview community.
Yeah. So TATO, my son's nickname is TATO, and his dad is from Mexico City. And his dad's mom was an incredible chef. An interesting thing that I learned in Guatemala and in working with the populations that I worked with, that there was a really low rate of literacy. And a lot of the women who were these phenomenal chefs, a lot of the more modern girls did not want to be in the kitchen. So a lot of the recipes that had existed in families for generations were no longer being created. So I set out to do a project with my mother-in-law. She was a chef in Mexico City, and I set out to do a project with her to write down all of her recipes because we all love her food so much and did not want to lose those recipes after she passed. She did pass 2 years ago. So I created TATO sort of an homage to her and an homage to my son's Latino roots, and really just in celebration of the incredible food that came out of the kitchen from her and from my son's father's family. I wanted to do it, of course, in Bayview because my heart and life is in Bayview. Then I opened Café Alma last year in 2019. All Good Pizza and TATO are located on 3rd Street in the main corridor of the Bayview. And then Café Alma is actually on Inez Avenue and overlooks the bay. And it is technically Bayview, Hunters Point, but it's also India Basin is what most people refer to it as. And it's down by the shipyard. And that's a project that I've done in collaboration with the development build, who is actually doing the big development out there. They've been an extraordinary partner to me, and they wanted to have some community activation. And we thought a little cafe to serve the community would be a great idea. There's nothing out there. Café Alma is literally the only restaurant in that area. In fact, almost the only food business at all, with the exception of, places like Eclectic Cookery where they're just creating food. There's a little tiny market at the new shipyard, but there's just not a lot of options for people to eat out there. So Café Alma really was created to provide a local option. And also in the same way that I've done All Good Pizza and TATO, really utilizing all of the extraordinary resources of the community.
So how has COVID-19 impacted the production of all your restaurant operations?
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, prior to COVID-19, my biggest joy is being in the kitchen and cooking, but I also felt like every day it was like hosting a party. And so, of course, with the shutdown, we lost that sense of community, really. I think all 3 of my restaurants really operate as sort of community centers in a way. And I think most restaurants do. Yeah, it's been terrible. We've been really fortunate to be able to pivot to some other activities, but I really miss the community. I really miss being able to host. All 3 of my locations have operated as a host to other small businesses as well. I love doing pop-ups with other entrepreneurs and people who are like just getting started, or people who have a small business but don't necessarily want a brick and mortar location. That was such a big part of all 3 of these locations. And COVID-19, of course, has shut that down. I feel very fortunate that we're even still in existence, because I know so many of the restaurateurs and friends that I work with across various organizations that I'm involved with have not been able to survive. So it's really a dire time for restaurants in general. And, we have not been free of that, unfortunately.
So would you say your idea of being community-centric, of being a little community gathering point, is that one of the biggest impacts you feel like you've had in the Bayview community over the years? Or is it providing jobs?
Yeah, I think it's, a little bit of both. I do hire local. But I think All Good Pizza, you've been there, so it's a pretty big space. It's 7,000 square feet of outdoor space, which is really unique for San Francisco. And I've really been able to utilize that to provide a venue essentially for community organizations, community activities, even down to some of the political stuff that's happened. We even had events for London Breed and all kinds of people. So having that outdoor space has been really incredible, I think, for the community. And it's allowed me to be generous in offering that space as well. We host a farmer's market there, which we've now taken virtual. We've done a ton of art fairs and different events. We've done a lot of pop-ups with other local businesses and vendors and entrepreneurs. And it's really been an incredible space for the Bayview community. So yeah, I think that is definitely the primary impact. But I do hire local, and I do, again, love to utilize local resources. So I think it's also been a showcase for some of the businesses that sort of operate behind the scenes because, in Bayview, we're pretty isolated. We don't have a legitimate grocery store. We don't have a lot of the services that many other communities benefit from. So I think sometimes even companies like Molinari Salami, which are so well known, people don't know that they're in the Bayview. So it's nice to be able to highlight someone like them and say, hey, this is made right here for decades. And now you're able to eat their pepperoni or their salami or their prosciutto on a pizza. So I guess that's kind of my community impact.
So folks who are watching or listening to this right now, how can they help you in your 3 different restaurant operations, especially during COVID?
Well, they can eat there.
So at this point, it's just takeout, right? Because the city's closed it all down.
Yeah, we're still closed down for outdoor dining. We did open for outdoor dining during the allowed time, and all 3 locations do have outdoor dining abilities. So once that comes back, which I think will probably be a while, because we're in a pretty bad phase right now, but hopefully that will come around soon. I read today that Sacramento opened today, so let's hope. But yeah, just local support. And I'm always advocating for just support in general of the Bayview too. We have a lot of really great restaurants here. My neighbor, Auntie April Spears, is a very dear friend of mine. And one thing about Bayview that's really incredible is we have this beautiful network of business owners. And I really feel like we try to support each other and work together. There's a lot of women actually at the helm of these businesses too. So it's been really fun to be a part of that. But as far as support, yeah, ordering takeout, we do offer gift cards. We are a participant in an organization called SF New Deal. So that has really kept us afloat throughout the pandemic. We make meals for people residing in hotels, primarily unhoused people that are in the hotels. We also feed people in navigation centers. And we are also doing some of our own things. At TATO, I started something called Taco Love, which is on Fridays, we offer a pay what you can meal. So anyone that wants to is welcome to come in and drop a dime in the jar. The suggested price for the meal is $10. And if people pay that full $10, we then will donate an additional meal. So we've been working with a local organization that's actually just a few blocks away from my house that's providing meals to the community. And we've been successful with it. The first week, we were able to put out 150 meals to the community by way of some really generous donors. Actually, I had a friend who's in Sacramento who said, hey, I want to support 50 meals. I can't be there, obviously, to eat, but I want to buy 50 meals for the neighborhood. So people have been really generous and in rising to the occasion and just seeing the great need that exists. I think that's one of the things with this pandemic that has been really illuminating is understanding that we live in this very, very rich city, and we still have tremendous need. And there's a lot of hungry people. There's a lot of unhoused people. And I think that the best thing for us to do in this crisis is to come together and take care of each other.
Would you say that that's one of the positive things, or are there other positive things that you could see coming out of the crisis to support local food and beverage operators and workers?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the positive things. I think also the restaurant industry is such a tremendous industry worldwide, right? Like restaurants so often provide such a vital resource to communities, not just in food. A lot of times it's around just the structuring of communities and making people feel seen and heard and welcome. And I know for all of my locations, we have regulars that are there every day and you get to know them and their stories. And without those spaces, you realize how isolated and lonely it can be for people. And I know that in San Francisco, and especially now, a lot of people work from home. So we have always had customers that do work from home, but are able to get away for a little while and come out and eat. I think this pandemic has really illuminated the importance of businesses like restaurants and so many others, not just restaurants. But I think also restaurant workers, part of my desire to hustle and work 1,000 hours a day is really to keep my staff employed. I've got an incredible team that I've worked with for many, many years. Some of my staff I've been with for 20 years. They were with me in previous careers where I managed them in different restaurants. And it's really, important to me to be able to keep them employed and to keep the faith of the community through these sort of centers of hospitality. I think COVID has also just slowed a lot of us down and just really sort of highlighted the preciousness of life overall.
Well, thank you, Kristin. That was great. I really appreciate you sharing all your wonderful food and beverage offerings. 3, and you're still going, and that's wonderful. We'll make sure that listeners and viewers have contact information, website, social media, especially like the fact that people can buy food to support other folks, the food donation. We'll make sure that people can follow All Good, TATO, and Café Alma and get engaged to support all of your amazing work there in the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for what you're doing too.
Please stay safe out there as we work our way through this crazy new normal.
Yes, thank you. You too.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voice of Kristen Hulk, the owner of All Good Pizza, TATO, and Café Alma. To find out more about Kristin's 3 restaurants, as well as the community events and guest chef events, please go to allgoodpizza.com, tatosf.com, and cafealmasf.com. You can listen to the story of Kristin's friend April Spheres and her Auntie April's Chicken and Waffles in part 1 of our Doing Business in the Bayview series in our archives. To Kristin's point about the potential of the city of San Francisco and Bay Area counties lifting the stay-at-home lockdown and resuming activities permitted under the state of California's purple tier, such as allowing restaurants to host outdoor dining, City of San Francisco Mayor London Breed announced in a January 22, 2021 tweet, the city may soon reopen because the City of San Francisco's COVID-19 reproductive rate is back under 1 at 0.99. Let's hope that the rate stays low for several more weeks so that Kristin, just like all the other food entrepreneurs we've covered in our series, can reopen outdoor dining to help stabilize their small businesses, stay alive, and retain needed jobs. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. I want to thank my associate producer, Eric Estrada, and Casey Nance at Citron Studios, along with the wonderful crew at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. Voices of the Community is a member of Intersection for the Arts, which allows us to offer you a tax deduction for your contributions. Please go to georgecoster.com and click on the donate link to make a donation to help us provide future shows just like this one. While you're on our website, you can enjoy our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities. And you can sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows, as well as shows and events from the organizations that are included in our episodes. Take us along on your next COVID walk by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.